It's a pleasure actually to introduce Razieh, an independent researcher who graduated from Tabriz University in philosophy. Wonderful. Here you are. So, floor is yours.
My name is Razieh Taherkhani, and I hold a master's degree in philosophy from Tabriz University, as Iqan said. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to deliver my presentation today, and I look forward to your feedback and constructive criticism. Before we begin, I'd like to clarify the title. I realize it may seem a bit vague. First, I prefer to use the term thinkers rather than philosophers. Second, by neglected role, I do not mean to imply ignorance. Rather, I intend to highlight how Iranian thinkers deliberately avoid or sidestep the concept of subjectivity. The main of this research is to delve into the analyze the approach of contemporary Iranian thinkers to the modern era, assessing their treatment of subjectivity and engagement with modern philosophical thought. Therefore, the following questions are the central question of this presentation. How have Iranian thinkers faced subjectivity in different periods of Iran's contemporary history? What is the current relationship between the dominant philosophical approach in Iran and subjectivity? As subjectivity rooted in humanism has established human rationality as the foundation for understanding the objective world, what is the relationship between the indifference of Iranian thinkers or even the anti-modern approach of some prominent Iranian thinker with the foundation of modern philosophy and the differences between religious or metaphysical visions and the philosophical? And the last question, can the efforts of Iranian thinkers to find alternatives to subjectivity succeed, or is this endeavor fundamentally futile? As you know, subjectivity is a concept related to enlightenment. According to Foucault's reading, modernity is more of an attitude than a period of history. He suggests modernity is the constitution of the self as an autonomous subject. Further, Foucault's drawing on Kant says that enlightenment is a moment when humanity is going to put its own reason to use without subjecting itself to any authority. According to Foucault's definition, the Enlightenment and its fundamental concepts are not confined to a specific historical period. For over 100 years, Iranian thinkers have grappled with the challenge of reconciling modernity and tradition. Despite the publication of numerous books on this subject, the conflict continues to persist and warrants further scrutiny. One of the reasons this confrontation endures in the fundamental differences between two attitudes, modernity and the Iranian Islamic Shia on humanism. Consequently, subjectivity conflicts with the Shia Islamic Iranian vision, primarily due to differing views on human nature. Modernity's cornerstone lies in enlightenment, which prioritizes rationality and rational criteria, the use of reason by the subject himself as an individual, whereas religion attitude is rooted in faith, which mankind consider obedient and submit to divine command. When examine how Iranian thinkers engage with subjectivity, it comes imperative to explore various epistemological dimensions. The discussion of faith versus reason, the issue of human subjectivity and free man, rationality, religious attitude versus practical insight. To delve into this question, it is important to look at how different generations of contemporary Iranian thinkers engage with the modern Western philosophy. Given the broad spectrum of perspective among contemporary Iranian thinkers and intellectuals, and since typology of intellectuals falls aside the scope of this research, I will refrain from doing so. However, to aid understanding, I will broadly outline contemporary Iranian thinkers across three historical periods. From the constitutional period to 1941, from 1941 to the 1979 revolution, and from 1979 to the present. The fully traditionally educated philosopher in 19th century in Iran did not critically interact with the modern Western philosophy, mainly because they denied the need to. This apathy and the lack of attention of Islamic philosophy scholars to modern philosophy may be observed in the Badi'ul Hikam by Mullah Ali Zunuzi. In response to seventh question asked by Prince Badi'ul Mulk Mirza about Western philosophy, Mullah Ali Zunuzi gave a very short answer with the following term. All the issues that Western philosophy has addressed have already been considered better and more deeply in Iranian Islamic philosophy. In fact, Iranians who are aware of their philosophical tradition do not need Western philosophies. So, as you see, so far, nearly 2 centuries, this perspective remains dominant in Iranian philosophical discourse. As issue worth considering in this period, closely tied to the concept of subjectivity, is the lack of attention from Iranian thinkers and intellectuals to the first translation of Descartes' discourse on the method in 1863. As you know, the constitutional period, despite its failure, marked a turning point in Iran's contemporary history as one of the first fruits of modern Western thought in Iran. Many books have been written about the constitutionalism movement, which have investigated the reasons for the failure of this movement. It can be argued that one of the reasons for the constitution failure is rooted in the concept of subjectivity. Concepts such as freedom, constitution, democracy, and government, and etc., which were introduced to Iranians for the first time by intellectuals, are deeply rooted in Enlightenment thought. Enlightenment thought means an attitude that emphasizes the individual and liberates them from all form of guardianship and authority. Now, the question is, how familiar were the Iranian intellectuals with the foundation of modern philosophy? Documents show that some of these intellectuals during the constitutional period had access to the Western philosophical world of the 18th century. Razieh Taherkhani in Culture, Wisdom, and Freedom named several Western philosophers whose works were available to Iranian intellectuals. He then highlights that one of the issues worth investigating in contemporary Iranian history is why translated Western philosophy works are not even found in library. Additionally, Mashallah Ajudani has revealed in his studies how the intellectuals of the constitutional period knowingly or unknowingly reduced the concepts related to modernity to somehow reconcile modernity with the Shia Islamic tradition. In summing up this historical period, through the study of constitutional amendments and the opposition of the clerics, including Sheikh Fazlullah Nouri, It seems that the fundamental difference between the attitude of modernity and the Iranian Islamic Shia attitude toward individuality was recognized. Sheikh Fazlullah Nouri considers freedom to be blasphemy and declared that non-Muslims are not equal to Muslims, and therefore he approved the Sharia constitution. During the period of Pahlavi II, Iranian thinkers avoided the concept of subjectivity due to the prevailing intellectual atmosphere. On the one hand, many Iranian leftist intellectuals confused the wealth and achievement of modernity with Western exploitation, and on the other hand, Pahlavi II sought to build an alternative ideology to counter communist influence and preserve the monarchy. In line with this mapping ideology, the presence of the French Orientalists and Shiologists, Islamologists, Henry Corbin, strengthened the anti-modernist view among Iranian thinkers. It seems that in this period, Iranian thinkers had understood subjectivity and its foundation, but they opposed it due to their anti-modern ideology. For example, Ahmad Fardi viewed the Cartesian subject as the cornerstone of modernity, asserting that it underpins modern thought. He perceived the concept of the Cartesian subject as foundational to autonomy, equating concept of autonomy with a form of hubris akin to Pharaonism. After the revolution, especially in the first 2 decades, the dominant intellectual atmosphere remained contaminated with ideology, and most of the thinkers of in this period after revolution were a student of the thinker of the previous. Despite the establishment of modern universities and philosophy departments, Iranian thinkers have largely overlooked the concept of subjectivity, in the sense that Iranian thinkers sought to localize, some of Iranian thinkers sought to localize philosophical concept, and in this regard, comparative philosophy provided an opportunity for philosophy researchers in Iran to compare Iranian Muslim philosophers with Western philosophers. The prevailing philosophical milieu in Iran remains predominantly pre-modern and metaphysical, while some philosophical circles in recent decades have knowledge that the neglect of subjectivity may underline certain societal issues in contemporary Iran. Not only subjectivity has yet to become a central paradigm within the country's intellectual discourse, but there are still some philosophy teachers who, while understand the importance of subjectivity, but out of their loyalty to metaphysical philosophy, try to somehow connect Islamic philosophy with the concept of subjectivity. Subjectivity has received limited attention among Iranian philosophers, with only a few scholars briefly addressing it in their works. However, comprehensive studies on this subject are notably lacking. Interestingly, during my research, I observed that Iranian scholars in the field of law have delved into the concept of subjectivity more than philosophers. This interest of Iranian jurists in the issue of subjectivity is understandable. As mentioned earlier, the attitude of modernity regards humans as free and autonomous beings, whereas Iranian perspectives often present a contrasting view that challenges the notion of subjectivity. This disparity becomes particularly evident when comparing Islamic law with international law. Meanwhile, subjectivity has been understudied. Farzin Wahdat is one of the few thinkers as a sociologist, not even a philosopher, who specifically pointed subjectivity in his book God and Juggernaut, Iran's intellectual encounter with modernity. He studies individual subjectivity in the opinions of some Iranian intellectuals and thinkers from the constitutional period to contemporary thinkers. Since Wahdat considers subjectivity as one of the pillars of the modern era and modernity, seeing it as conflicting with the discourse among Iranian thinkers, as far as Reza Ardakhani is considered as anti-modernist in his work. Another thinker who researches in the field of philosophy and deals with the concept of subjectivity and modern Western philosophy is Mohammad Hossein Siddiq Yazji. He emphasizes that the Iranian Shia Islamic culture background is an obstacle against the realization of human free will and civil liberties. And also with condescension, it can be said that Jawad Tabatabai also pay attention to subjectivity because he considers the biggest challenge of Iran's contemporary history to be rationality in the sense of enlightenment. He also emphasizes that the way out of the political and social crisis of Iranian society in the conflict between tradition and modernity is the acceptance of modern subjectivism and the methodological criticism of tradition that frees Iranian society from the state of refusal to think. Therefore, the big portion of my research, my work, deal with the historical criticism of the course of thought, political thought in particular in Iran, and the genealogy of the gradual decline of intellectual thought and its descent into anti-rationalism. Thank you for your attention.